Advisory Council, which supports the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors. So I think we can start off with a roll call.
Yes, so I'll start off. Chair Thomas Lang,
Present.
Vice Chair George Cleveland. Here. Susan Boudreau. Jim Herman.
He emailed us.
Dr. Melinda McLean.
I'm here.
Mickey Norris.
Here.
Tom Owens.
Haven't heard anything from Tom, have we? No.
We have 4 members. We have a quorum.
So
Booyah.
we're here, the flag is here, we might do the pledge of allegiance. Edgar, would you like to?
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Let me try to make sure I remember. We will all say it in our heads very quietly. All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to its republic to stand one nation under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Public education system right there. All right.
Okay, treasurer's report, Edgar.
So we have in our treasury $2,964.59. We received our small little business cards, so I'll put these on the desk. Look for your name and grab yours. Yep, and you can have an update on the name badges soon.
Okay. So as I understand it, Edgar, we'll have a bulk approval of minutes next month.
Yes. Yes.
Recording in progress.
So who?
Shirley or Sue.
Who's
Where's mine?
who's
In there.
whose Zoom was that?
I'm not quite sure. I think it was someone who walked in. I muted everyone besides John, who is part of the meeting.
So the first item in our list of presentations is the noise issue report with the county's conservation and development office, as well as the sheriff's office weighing in. This is an issue that a lot of us have wanted to cover for a while. So why don't we start with the report?
All right, I will kick this off, and I'm going to facilitate the presentations. And we have representatives on both the building enforcement side and the planning side of building department, and of course the sheriff's department. And I think this presentation is intended to first talk about what are the tools that are in effect now. Could there be additional tools? I mean, with the goal of how do we enforce it? And I know we will hear that we do have a special events noise ordinance that we adopted last year to address some loud parties that were occurring in some other parts of the county, and the ordinance does apply countywide. Although I think it maybe to make it more relevant on some of the issues here in El Sobrante, we could amend the ordinance to have it apply to smaller events, and that may allow some of the events that folks have been complaining about to be addressed under that particular noise ordinance that deals with events. And so why don't I start with, let me see the order. We have some of the rules are related to the Department of Conservation and Development and some the Sheriff's Office. So I'll start with the Department of Conservation and Development, and we have Francisco Avila, a principal planner, and Joe Lasado, a code enforcement manager there. So Francisco, Joe, who should we start with? And then we'll go to the Sheriff's Department on this.
I can start, Supervisor Joy.
I'd like to thank everybody for having invited us here tonight. We understand, the concerns, we've been dealing with, similar situations throughout the county. And because of that, we have adopted an urgency ordinance, which, has several provisions aimed at addressing, more localized type of issues. Some of those things that we've done is reducing the number of people which qualify some activity as an event, right? So if it's qualifying as an event, then they have to meet certain standards like noise standards. So tonight we can talk about that. And as part of recommendations that you guys have discussions in the future, some of those recommendations may be to lower that number, that threshold, that which qualifies as an event to when those noise restrictions kick in, things of that nature. But we have had good success throughout the county as a result of meetings like this, because we have the sheriff's office, we have the manager for the code enforcement division, and as part of our discussion tonight, we're communicate to you some of the tools and some of the things that we need in order to help you. So the word to get out, and some of those things are like calling the sheriff's department on a regular basis, and not just putting up with it, I should say, because the sheriff's office and we are in close coordination, and they are on the same page with submitting reports to us on Monday about activities that have occurred over the weekend. So that's definitely one thing to do, setting in the recommendations. After we have discussions, or if you guys have questions on what we might be able to include in a revision to the temporary event ordinance, is another tool that we could use to address the issues that you guys have. So that would be some of the things that we're working on, Supervisor Joy, and my recommendations.
Can you summarize how the current ordinance works? Because I think it may apply maybe to some, there's that lot that individuals have complained about on the dam road. And if we lower the number of people that trigger that ordinance, it would apply to that lot. So explain how that ordinance currently works.
Yeah, so how the ordinance works is that if some activity, we're calling some activity, some gathering, has a certain number of people and is, say, commercial oriented, say if you want to hold a fundraiser or something like that.
Or a dance party that people are charging for, things like that, right?
Some sort of commercial activity, other than a birthday party, you need to get a permit for it, right? But you need to have a certain number of people to trigger that, so you need to get a permit. But what we experience is a lot of people that said in code enforcement manager Joe attested to this, when he shows up, well, this is just a birthday party, or something like that. So there's no commercial activity at all. A birthday party would be exempt. So that does not mean that we can't figure out a way to sort of apply the noise restrictions to an event that is otherwise exempt. And that's the tricky part. That's the tricky part that we're gonna have to, because everybody here has a party at their house for their loved ones or themselves or whatever, or eventual party. Does that mean you have to get a permit? No, you can still gather in this country. And for your birthdays and things of that nature. So what we're doing, and as part of our conversation, and the information I'm trying to give you, is trying to find the loopholes that they're finding and they're using against us. And say, for instance, hey, this is my birthday party, I don't need no permit for this. Lowering the number so that it's still qualified as an event, they just don't need to get a permit for it. But if it's an event, they still need to comply with the noise restrictions. That is where we're going to get them, because if they have an event and they exceed the noise restrictions, then the sheriff's office could do a report, and on Monday we could issue a fine.
John, can we ask questions?
Yeah, but let me have him finish the presentation a little on this ordinance at least, because I don't think he's fully explained it. So, let's go through this. I do think yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's why I have a question. So I get it about the number of people. But for example, I have a neighbor who regularly has gatherings of his family and friends. I'm sure it's not commercial in nature, but they have a massive number of speakers and they have live bands. And you can hear it a mile. It is not that there's that many people there, it's how loud it is. So that's my question. So I get it that might be one way to try to get at it, but number of people in my mind does not necessarily equal how loud the event is. Or let's call it the party, because it's just a party.
Okay. Good.
So that's a question.
So to encourage, you guys in a response, we do have multiple ways to attack it. We have code enforcement, submit their complaints, and they call the sheriff's office. Sheriff office will show up and use the tools that they have, but on a regular basis, every time it occurs, so that they don't get embedded and used to doing it. So there's tools that are on the books now, that we just have to do it and use those tools. Making calls, and that's the best way to do that instance of what you're talking about. Because, say if you have just.
And
me-
I'm gonna ask for clarity that Francisco, Joe, and the sheriff all make their presentation, because it'll answer some of your questions, and then we can open it up to questions. Because, and I'm differentiating this, I'm sorry I couldn't be there, I'm in my office. Into those events, I think that you just raised, which is relevant. And then this vacant lot issue, which is probably more covered under the ordinance as opposed to your event. So there's going to be different tools and different events. So I want to make sure before we get off the events.
Let's do it.
Because Tom, if you start taking questions, you're going to ask questions that the sheriff is going to answer and that Joe Lozado is going to answer before the question is asked.
So let's do it this way. Let's complete the presentation and then open it up to
Right.
questions.
Okay.
All right. So no more.
And Francisco, on the ordinance, I want to make sure as I facilitate this, I think, explain, I know right now, the event has to have 75 or more people to come under the ordinance, correct?
Correct.
And so one of the potential amendments that could come out of this is lower that number to a lesser number. And then explain the sound limitations and the amplified sound, what the rules are. My understanding is no event can have amplified sound after 8 p.m. Monday through Sunday through Thursday, and 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. Can you explain more of those rules? Yeah, this doesn't apply, Melinda, to your situation possibly, but the other situation, we're trying to handle all the complaints we're getting, and there's going to be different ways to attack different ones. So I want to, because some of you have raised the issue of the lot on the dam road. I think the ordinance here, probably with some amendments, can apply to that lot. We'd have to make some amendments to it. Explain those requirements, Francisco.
So you're correct that we recently adopted the urgency ordinance that prohibits amplified sound after 10 p.m. on Friday and Saturday, and it's 8 p.m. on other days. So at first, it was a permitted event that had gotten a permit, but then we changed it to any event, even if you were exempt, had a large birthday party or something like that, to address those, otherwise exempt events. So if they do, the sheriff would come out if there was a call, submit a report to Joe Monday morning, and we issue a fine.
So the sheriff's, maybe we go to Lieutenant Rodriguez. How does the sheriff's department enforce those things?
He's not. Oh, there it is.
Up, he turned
Sorry, you
on
guys
his-
got me now?
Yeah.
Okay, so, several ways that we enforce it, and just to give you guys an idea, I know we're talking about the lot on Dam Road. I went ahead and had dispatch route me the calls from service for 2023 as it relates to that specific address. And we had a total of 6 calls, ranging either from a loud party or loud music detail. 5 of the 6 were from one weekend in May, which would have been the 14th and 15th. Some of the calls were very close in time. The parties, the timing of the call was about 7 o'clock in the evening, and about 10 o'clock was a little bit after 10 o'clock was the latest. And at that time, the notes as far as how the call was closed out was that the party was ended and that there was no more music at that time. So just to give you guys a reference for the calls for service that we received. So one of the things that we're going to be utilizing, as was mentioned previously, is there's a party complaint form that goes along with this ordinance, or at least that we're utilizing to help enforce this ordinance. And that complaint form has some general information as far as the date and time. We attempt to make contact with the property owner. If there's not a property owner on scene, what we do is we get the contact information for whoever is the organizer for that event, whether it's an unpermitted commercial event or if it's just a private event. We'll get the contact information for those folks, state, whether or not they had permission from the property owner, and then how many people were on scene. As of now, the threshold was previously 150, it was lowered to 75. And there's been discussion as to, in order to make it more effective, if that number needs to be reduced as well. And then from there, it'll be, we'll advise them that the property owner that, hey, we're getting noise complaints. Can you lower it? And also other things that are important for this and are important for the ordinance is whether or not there was a cover charge to attend the event, whether or not food was being sold at the event, to help us differentiate and help provide code enforcement with that information for when they go back and they take their follow-up action. At that point, there can be a fine issued out by code enforcement when they go back out to do their follow-up. And that fine, if they get repeat calls or repeat offenses at the same address, that fine increases over time or with the offenses. Other ways that we can handle it is there's the disturbing the peace, the penal code that's in effect. One of the things we need for that, though, is we actually need a citizen who's willing to sign a citizen's arrest for that. It also, just because someone says they're willing to do it, though, it still has to meet the threshold for probable cause in order for us to actually to take that arrest. A lot of times, if it's a party and there happens to be a lot of vehicles in the roadway, one of the easiest ways for us to resolve house parties is to be looking for parking violations or vehicle violations that would allow us to lawfully tow that vehicle. At that point, we let the attendees know that the vehicle is being towed, or whoever owns this vehicle, your vehicle is going to be towed unless you can correct the action. And in most cases, once people realize that their vehicles are going to be towed, that tends to end the party. Does that help?
Let me ask you, so can you take this under this ordinance? Let's say this, let's take the event of this lot where that would come under the ordinance, assuming we lowered the number of people that was the threshold. You could go to them if you got a call that evening and inform them they were too loud and tell them, or if they violated the ordinance, to ask them to lower the music or stop the party depending on the time of the evening. So you could do those things during the party?
Correct. So we could do those things during the party. And I know in some instances, especially where it's been in a repeat offender, that our deputies have actually notified code enforcement, and one of the supervisors has actually responded out in the off hours and actually issued the citation at that time. So that's one of the avenues that we can go. But yes, definitely can advise them that, hey, you guys are in violation of the ordinance. And one of the things I would have asked the deputies assigned to base station to do is to document the incident in the report so that we have records other than just the call for service that was generated.
And what about the situation that Dr. McLean talked about, where it's at someone's house? Let's say it's a party and it's not an event that triggers the ordinance. you would explain again further how you would respond to that.
Yeah, and that it's in that we wouldn't be able to enforce the ordinance. We'd have to have a disturbing the peace essentially, which would be the penal code I was referring to. And we would have to have probable cause to do something with that. And
What is that? So what does that mean for the residents? Does that mean the neighbor signs a form and then you?
yes, essentially, and understandably, I recognize that most neighbors don't want to do that just for fear of retaliation down the line and not wanting to disrupt the environment within the neighborhood. But that is one of the options. So we tend to ask for compliance initially, and depending on the time of day, some of the calls for service, as I mentioned, we're at 7 p.m. Based on the time of the day, especially if it's amplified music, something of that nature, we advise them, hey, we're receiving complaints that your music's too loud. Can you please turn it down so we don't have to come back? Most cases they comply while we're there. However, if we get additional calls, now we'll go back and go further and look
Right.
for other avenues.
Now, do you have I know the board the Board of Supervisors increased staffing to the Sheriff's Department about a year ago. So tell us where you are on staffing now for West County, El Sobrante.
Yeah, so effective July 3rd, we had our shift change. So now we are staffing 7 beats. So areas of responsibility is our beat. So now 7 deputies on each of the shifts. So we have 5 shifts. So that allows us as a beat car, one of the beats being El Sobrante, allows that deputy to stay in that jurisdiction or that area of responsibility longer, whereas previously on some of the shifts, we only had 4 deputies for the entire West End. So if I get a call for service, just to give you an example, a priority detail for us, just based on the risk of injury and the severity of the call, would be, say, a domestic violence call. If I were to get a domestic violence call, and let's say that the call is in North Richmond, there's a deputy assigned to North Richmond. However, if there's a deputy that needs to go and cover him or her, that would be the El Sobrante car, and they would have to go to North Richmond. So that takes them out of El Sobrante. So previously, when there was only 4, you can imagine how often that occurs throughout a shift. Now, with there being 7, it allows us more overlap and allows deputies to stay in their area of responsibility a lot longer.
Anything else you want to add before we go to code enforcement to make their comments?
Not at this time, sir.
I guess we'll go to code enforcement to Joe. Sort of what's the process you use? Where are there things, how you address it?
Well, I started working on Saturdays. I go out and I'm looking for the events. When the events happen, I make contact with the property owners. The property owners have learned real quick what the exemptions are to this rule. So naturally I pull up, it's only for people. When you have 100 tables set up and put 100 chairs, it's 74. Then it's my family member. Well, the family members from another county, they're not even from that house. So these are the obstacles we face. So one thing that would help us is defining family to the immediate family at that party, not a family member from Ohio coming out to have their party at their place. Because they start using all their family members to have 20 parties that year. The number of people, when you have 75 to 100 and they're charging $75 to $100 a piece. You know, if I had $100 at 75 people, there's $7,500.
So Joe, maybe to move it forward, how would you suggest amending that ordinance to address more of the situations? Because that's an issue we could take up at the part of it here is I'm also trying to learn to see how we could best amend that ordinance to apply more effectively.
Defining family to the immediate people of that parcel, not allowing that household to keep having members from 30 other family members to all come to that one parcel.
And then lowering the threshold of the number of people.
Right, and lowering the number of threshold to people, so it's not economically fit for the people holding these parties.
Any other changes you would see to make?
No, those are the biggest ones I'm running
Okay.
by.
Francisco, any other things you want to add or any other changes to the ordinance you would see?
No, I think we've covered the majority of it, Supervisor.
Okay. All right, so that's the end of our presentation. I think the rest is trying to answer your questions. I'm trying to use this, the reason I'm facilitating it, because I'm the one that's gonna have to look at any ordinance changes at the board with my colleagues. So yeah, that's the presentation.
So what I'd like to do first is have one round of questions from the MAC and then go to the audience because there are a lot of folks who have expressed interest in this. So. Go ahead.
So is there a way to monitor so-called family members by measuring, or the lot size, and you have so many per yards or so many per lot size? Just like the farming we're doing in the building. Like our maximum capacity is 49 in this room, but the number stayed, I don't know.
Yeah, well, in East County, our parties out there accumulate from 100 to 200 to 300 people, because we're talking 5 acres
Oh, 5 acres.
out there, so it's hard to make one ordinance what's good for the whole county when we have 26 acre parcel to 2,600 square feet. That's why when I'm talking about family, the people that hold these parties in charge for it. I
No, we're not talking about doing it in the green part.
different times of the year coming over. And that's their party, but they keep holding every party at that one individual house to meet that exemption.
Okay. Melinda?
Well, I don't think we should ever get in the business of making people define what's their family. I think that's a terrible idea. And it seems to me, if they're charging $75 to $100, that's not a family event anymore, that's a commercial event. And under the ordinance as it stands right now, it's a commercial event, like people are paying, then shouldn't it coordinate?
Trying to prove the money now, it's hard because it caught on to us.
Well, trying to prove family is gonna be worse.
No, it's gonna probably ask for a driver's license, what's your address?
Yeah, but and I think people, anyway, I get what you're saying. That's just my 2 cents. I personally still think that the level of noise is the thing I'm concerned about. I really don't care if there's 50 people or 100 people there, but if I can hear it a mile away, if there are 5 people there and they've got speakers going and a 6-piece Tejano band until midnight, that's my concern. So I personally, John, really would like to see an actual good old fashioned noise ordinance that just says, this many decibels is not okay. That's what I would like.
And let me ask, because I think this issue, because Francisco, can you address sort of, I know you've looked at some jurisdictions, what are the strengths or weaknesses? I mean, the ability of any of these ordinances, right, is really dependent on the ability to enforce them. So tell us what the issues are around that for an ordinance.
Definitely, as Mr. Lozado alluded to, establishing a noise ordinance that specific, or trying to tackle one thing is gonna cross a lot of different boundaries and it may hurt other areas and other activities, so it may not be the right tool necessarily to try to come up with a noise ordinance that fixes everything. We're always gonna have bad neighbors, it's just gonna happen. You're never gonna fix that with a noise ordinance or anything. The idea is to attack that situation head on. So each district is different, the needs are different, and we have an opportunity now, right, with the temporary event ordinance that deals with noise to make some amendments that are responsive to complaints that people are having and fit that in there without having to create a whole new ordinance specific to a single issue that is very, very difficult to handle anyway.
Don, can I just ask one follow-up real quick?
Yeah, no, I'm just, yeah, I want him to answer questions, yeah.
Here's another thing that happens here that may not happen in other parts of the country, but maybe it does. We have the situation where Richmond actually has. And it says over X number of decibels after, and there are time frames very much like the other thing. You can't have, you can be loud in Sunday afternoon, but you can't be loud after 10 p.m., etc. They have an ordinance like that. Half the place around here, Richmond's on one side and the unincorporated is on the other side. So if you live on one side of the street, you comply with Richmond's law, but you live in the unincorporated and Sheriff Rodriguez shows up, he can't even talk to them. I mean, it's like, so it's not fair either. People are living under different laws in the same neighborhood.
We have the same problem in East County, people from Walnut Creek, Orinda, whatnot, are buying these lots out in nights and whatnot to hold their parties.
Right.
Because they can't do it in their city, so they're bringing it to the county.
All right, so
That's cool too. Thank
let's go to George.
Yeah, that's not the same,
What's that?
that they're buying properties in remote East County. This is actually the physical characteristics, and it's the problem of the boundaries or the borders or the region that is El Sobrante, because it has the influence of Richmond, the influence of San Pablo, the influence of Noel. It's all unincorporated. In particular, the area, the Richmond stuff is very difficult because it's like, there are people who, when they move here, they're not, sometimes they're not even sure where they live. People have told me, I thought I was El Sobrante, and the reverse. I'm concerned about the trying to legislate family, not so much because I just don't see it as a driver's license. Okay, here's your driver's. Oh, it says you live in Victorville, Southern California, and the answer is, well, I just moved here a week ago. So it's just.
That's why I'm trying to find a noise ordinance and a temp event for the whole county that fits the whole county as one is almost impossible because of the
Right.
diversity we have throughout the county.
Right, I get that, but what I'm trying to get across is that this particular part of the county, because of the topography, the geography, the interlocking of the city and the county, all mishmashed together, it's a little different here. And I know that the idea is try to find
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, and just to say on that, El Sobrante isn't as unique as you think. There are other areas of the count, unincorporated areas that are surrounded by cities that have very similar kinds of issues. Just to add, I don't think this is only in El Sobrante. I was going to look up Richmond's ordinance. I mean, my understanding is the ability to enforce all of these ordinances depends on having like a code enforcement officer working 24 hours, right? Right now, the sheriff responds. Richmond is unique in that it also has put, I don't know how this works with us, but Richmond has, and I'm not sure this is a good idea. I'm not sure we want to do this, but they make their police department, they put code enforcement within the police department. Which is sort of unique among cities and somewhat controversial, but yeah, so they do that, and I'm looking at theirs. So, and it's their chief of police enforces it. So in Contra Costa, we have an elected sheriff, which is different. I'm not certain the sheriff's department would be able to. That's up to the sheriff, take on the responsibility to enforce a noise ordinance. In most cities, it's the building department. And I don't know, Joe and Francisco, how would that work? I mean, if we had a noise ordinance, let's say, would we have to have like building inspectors basically on call every evening to make it work?
You basically have to have code enforcement on call to make that work, or the sheriff enforcing that noise ordinance.
Yeah, Supervisor, I would still like to just reiterate that, the noise issue that we're talking about and the amendments that we're making to the temporary event ordinance, right? We have an opportunity now to address that specific thing. So, taking the recommendations from the MAC and addressing it in terms of our amendment is just as good as trying to create the wheel over again. We have
Right. And maybe, I think maybe we should take a look at what recommend, as a former lawyer, right? There's ways we can change an existing ordinance to try to have it be broader to capture more and possibly change the standards to make it like, it's a type of noise ordinance. How do we change it or broaden it to apply to the circumstances you're all saying that we're all seeing is an issue in El Sobrante? That's why we're listening, right? Is what can we do as quickly as possible? One, how do we use the tools we have now? I think, let me just say, it is inaccurate to say that the sheriff's department can't go in and talk to somebody. For those of you who have said that, you've heard from Lieutenant Rodriguez, he can go out. The standards are different. He can try to get them, and he can go out there to the vacant lot and deal with that issue under the ordinance. And he can go to a home, but there's more limitations on the public nuisance part. I get that. But he can go out there and apply the ordinance in some areas. That's why I think one of the issues is, and I'm trying to learn this here tonight, how can we best broaden that ordinance to affect and be more effective?
Okay, thank you. Mickey, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have a few questions, and I'd also like to back up what Melinda said and her suggestions. I think they're all valid. I don't think it's the number of people that's the issue. It is the decibel level. So maybe we need a decibel level thing, or the number of parties. Can that be limited to a certain amount of parties a month? I mean, yeah, maybe once a month or something. And also the number of complaints. If the person is getting too many complaints, maybe that can be reined in. But related to the number of people, I mean, it could be a band, it could be a band that's rehearsing. I mean, that could be a big problem. They need to rein that in or find mitigation ways of doing that. I also like the idea of having maybe the adjacent areas can be amended, like the areas that are next to Richmond can be under the Richmond ordinance. Maybe the areas that are.
We can't.
Can't do that.
I mean, either we have an ordinance or we don't. And if we have an ordinance, we can't say this area is subject to Richmond. We have to have our own ordinance. We can't say an ordinance from Richmond applies, but we're trying to look at the substance of it, right?
Okay, right. One other thing is the disturbing the peace. If the neighbor wants to sign that, can that be anonymous, or it can't be anonymous? It has to be your name. Okay. All right, well, that's my input. I would suggest maybe a decibel level, number of complaints, and number of parties that an individual can have. Because I think that the problem is more like the non-commercial stuff, because I don't think there's that.
Well, there's some commercial.
Are there commercial?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that lot's commercial.
What are you talking, which lot are we talking about? Yeah, there's that long. Are you talking about Valley View and Santa? Or what?
Read the minutes from the last meeting and you'll find out,
I
because we
see.
talked about it later.
So I think we've had a good discussion from the map. What I'd like to do is go to the general audience and then to the folks on Zoom. So, sir, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm ready to speak if I may. Because
Yeah, 2 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Carl Arana. I live at 5161 Hilltop Drive. Mr. Joy, I know you from way back. Edgar, I know you way back. I'm a retired person from Contra Costa County. I've been here 30 years. And you know what? I see different faces, but the same damn problem. I'm telling you, the same damn problem. If it isn't running stop lights, it's the firework. I do want to give credit to the county this year. For the first time in the last 10 years at least, the fireworks started on the 3rd of July and ended on Monday. I've been used to the last 2 months of it. I am a veteran. I almost was 5150. My animals go crazy. I speak to Mr. Joya's office. Same comment. You know, seeing this, coming to this meeting after all these years, it's the same thing. No one agrees. We get nothing done. It's like the federal level. It's the same thing I saw at the Board of Supervisors. Everybody argues for no solutions. People don't come together to fight it. The problem is noise. I don't care if you charge, if you do whatever, the volume is noise. I'm telling you what's gonna happen, and I'm speaking to you, Sheriff, Deputy, whatever you wanna call it. Thank you for the added service. I do see Deputy Sheriff driving up and down Hilltop Road. I remember I was here when they did all the shooting on I-80 that ended up blowing up a fucking, excuse my language, a car across the street. Now, Mr. Joy, you probably remember, because I blew up your phone for help. And it took a month before a car was told that they blew up across the street from me. I'm a veteran, I'm tired of it, noise. The split in politics, the split in bureaucracy, what's occurring, you're gonna have vigilantes out here. What happened to neighborhood watch? We promoted it, oh, it was a bad one year.
10 seconds.
I'm upset. I'm tremendously upset. I believe in a neighborhood watch program. I believe in getting the message. I'm tired of politics that speak, no speak.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your message, and I understood it's deeply felt. Next,
I remember you from the previous incident with the blown up car, because I was on that.
Yeah.
I remember all that craziness.
are there other questions from ma'am?
So if I understood you to say that the Richmond does have an ordinance based on decibels,
Yes.
So- and apparently Walnut Creek has some enough ordinances that people can't get away with parties there. Is there a way to survey other cities, see what their noise ordinance say in the way of decibels? And see if we can't come up with something that's close enough to what the cities within the county do? If other cities have decibel based ordinances, let's see what they say. Maybe there's something in the middle ground that matches close enough to what other cities do. Okay. The county agrees.
Thank you. That's a very nice comment. Are there further comments from the audience here in the room? Chris?
Yeah, thank you. It's very interesting presentation. Appreciate you hearing what you guys had to say. It seems to me like maybe there's a way of changing the definition of commercial to include a volume aspect of it. Maybe would be a simpler way to resolve something like this. Or number of people. I don't find it offensive to go from 75 to 50 people at an event or something like that. But I think too much below 50 people kind of makes it hard for people to qualify as a personal event or something. So I thought I agree with a lot of what Mickey and the other people in the board say. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions from folks in the room? In that case,
Matthew was
we can go
first.
to Zoom.
Matthew was first. Yep.
Matthew?
Hi, thank you. My name is Matt Spohr. I live at 894 Appian Knoll Court, right off of Appian Way. We definitely have house parties here. Last year, there was one that was so loud it nearly drove us from our house. Lasted until 4 a.m. We called the sheriff. The sheriff said there was literally nothing they could do, which was very frustrating, which got me into this. As far as the comment about can we survey cities around the area, my research shows that Pinole, Walnut Creek, Concord, Richmond, Pleasant Hill, Antioch, and Martinez all have noise ordinances. It seems like we ought to be able to have something that fits for the entire county. My specific question about how to deal with house parties under the current rules, and Mr. Goya, I appreciate your, what can we do with the current rules attitude. So when I call the sheriff, should I say that my neighbors are making a lot of noise or that they're disturbing the peace? And do I tell the sheriff that I am willing to sign the affidavit? And does that then give the deputy ammunition to go to my neighbor and say, hey, a neighbor is willing to sign an affidavit of disturbing the peace against you, and I see that it could be valid. Maybe you want to turn it down. Is that how we should be doing this?
Yeah, so we'll ask, I'm gonna have folks answer a number of these questions at the end. A good question.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Cheryl.
Cheryl?
Yes, sir. I guess I understand the want for the noise ordinance on the commercial side. I understand that. I guess I'm a little apprehensive about over policing in the neighborhoods. I always have been, and I guess it's because I do live up near the reservoir in the hills, and if I have a problem with my neighbor, I go talk to my neighbor. which we don't have very many parties up there, this admittedly. I think the biggest thing we have is when someone has something, there's a lot of cars, right? They park in front of your house or they park too many cars on the street and you just talk to them. And so I think that's making a problem for everybody when there's not a problem for everybody seems to, that's not what's sitting right with me personally. I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for my own neighborhood. And so I think that being able to talk to everybody about what's happening, having a countywide ordinance that is not affecting everyone seems a little bit overreaching. So I do think we need to be talking about it from that aspect. And along with the people in the room who mentioned about the definition of family, I also think that is overreaching. I think we need to stick to the decibel level, which is a scientific thing, more than trying to reach into whose family is what. Thank you for listening.
Great points. Thank you so much. Are there further questions from folks on Zoom? In that case, here's my suggestion.
Can I respond to some questions first?
Sure.
Yeah, so let me just say, because I think there were some good questions. And let me first ask the one that Matthew asked. Lieutenant Rodriguez, did you want to answer that about whether it is if someone says, hey, if a sheriff deputy is told someone will sign sort of a public nuisance kind of document, whatever it would be, how does that affect how you would enforce it?
Yes, to Matt's point, sir. A couple things with that. When you call, if it's a noise complaint, if it's a party complaint, loud music, any of those will work. We'll be able to see that, that's what we're responding out to. If in regards to the response of there's nothing we can do, please, if you guys run into that or you have that experience, if you're making these reports, I'll include my contact information in the chat. Please let me know, because that's not an appropriate response. And there's always some effort that we can make, even if it's knocking on the door. At a minimum, it should be knocking on the door, advising them that, hey, we've received a complaint about a party, the loud music, whatever the case may be, or the number of cars, the parking associated with the party, whatever that may be. Please give us that call. If you state that you're willing to do that, yes, it just gives us a little bit more teeth. One of the things that's challenging with whether it's the ordinance or changing the current ordinance or putting a new ordinance in place is some of these things don't have a whole lot of teeth, which is what Mr. Lozada was mentioning, that it for some of the folks that are hosting these parties or that are disturbing the peace or having the loud music on a continual basis, it's normally taking a couple of times of being contacted before they realize, like, oh, okay, this is becoming a problem, and it's starting to become a problem for me by way of citations or fines that are associated with it. But some of the bands and the live music, people are spending, upwards of $1,000, sometimes several $1,000s for these bands to come out. So and I've personally been asked, well, sir, can you tell me how much the fine is going to be? And when I explain to them, whatever it may be, $150, they say, okay, go ahead and give me the citation or give me the fine. I'll take the fine, and we'll see you later. Essentially, because I paid such and such an amount to have this band here playing. So those are some of the things. So the comment about being neighborly, I agree. However, depending on the rapport that you have with your neighbors or even the neighborhood as a whole, you may get different reactions. So you do got to be a little cautious there, especially if if people have been drinking or things like that. They're not as welcoming. If you go over and try and knock on the door. But if you just try and establish that rapport ahead of time before the problem actually comes up, maybe that's a good result. But I agree with Supervisor Joya in this instance in regards to letting us kind of play out some of these strategies that are currently in place, rather than just creating a new ordinance, because we may continue to have the same problem.
So let me say what I'm hearing. I think the first thing is it makes sense to, the easiest route is right now to look at the existing noise ordinance we have that applies to events. And look how we can take this information and have it be amended to be more effective. I think that's something we'll definitely do, and I'll work with county staff on that. The issue of a countywide noise ordinance would probably involve also just going to each of the MACs around the county and getting their input. One of the points, I know I've talked to John Kopchik, today, he couldn't be here tonight, who runs planning and building. One of the issues they have said to me is, while some of these cities have noise ordinances on the books, the enforcement and effectiveness of this varies city to city. Just because there's a law doesn't mean it's making a difference, particularly in that in many of those jurisdictions, they don't have building inspectors out at night. So I think you do have, that's one thing we want to explore. Having a law and how it's being enforced and how effective it is are two different things. I think we all want to do something that is going to be effective to resolve the issues we're all talking about today. And it could be the noise ordinance could add some value. It may not really provide the substantive value that we all think it would. I mean, that's one of the things I hear from our building department is there's limitations on that. We're definitely, and I've even heard in Richmond, our office gets complaints. I get elected by Richmond residents. I don't make the laws. Our office gets lots of complaints or has heard complaints, I'm not sure it's lots, from Richmond residents about noise issues not being handled in Richmond. So I think it is a mistaken belief to feel that a noise ordinance is going to solve everybody's problems, because it doesn't in Richmond. Does it help? I'm sure it helps in some areas. So I think step one is looking at the existing ordinance and how do we make it stronger. Step two is maybe how to get better communication. People keep saying a sheriff deputy says we can't do anything. You just heard from the equivalent of our police chief for West County. He's base station commander, Lieutenant Rodriguez, that there is some things they can do. And if you hear a sheriff deputy say they can't do anything, you need to let us know, or the sheriff's department know. I'm meeting with the sheriff tomorrow. I will talk personally. I will talk to him about these issues, so that the sheriff's department, especially with the increased staffing they have in El Sobrante, will go out and try to do something. And we'll work with them in planning about how to be more effective on an ordinance that we currently have. And I'll take up, I don't know where all my colleagues are on a countywide noise ordinance. I know the demands are very different out in the farm areas of East County to other areas here in El Sobrante or Alamo. Noise is an issue everywhere, but it manifests itself in different ways. So I think this has been a helpful discussion. I know at the last meeting, we took down all of the addresses so that there could be some follow-up on things. I do think the issue at the lot, there may be more teeth right now, but Dr. McLean's issue, of a neighbor is something we want to figure, how can we do a better job? Does it need a noise ordinance, or can we do something now? So I hear you all.
So I'd just like to make one comment to kind of tie things up, and we were asked as a MAC to see if maybe we could give some recommendations for things that could be done sort of immediately, or priorities that we have with respect to noise ordinance, disturbing the peace, etc. One thing I hear, decibels. Is there any way to measure the decibels objectively? That's just a very, I think, a clear-cut way of doing it. Another big impact, not so much number of people, but number of cars. Is parking in the neighborhood completely messed up? Does it cause a hazard as people, let's say, might be pulling out of their driveway on San Pablo Dam Road, and they can't see anything because of all the cars parked nearby? And then the other thing I heard is frequency of disturbances. So, it may be that a person has parties with 25 people, but they're always creating excess noise or always filling up the neighborhood with cars. So is there any way to act based on the number of disturbances? But those are kind of the three practical things that I think we could kind of make a recommendation on looking at. So I think we're,
Can I just, Nikki's other thing about number of complaints, I think is another one I would add.
that's what we just
But
said.
not number of parties, but also how many number of complaints.
I think that's what I meant.
Yeah, both of
So-
those things, they're slightly different.
Yeah. In that case, I think we've had a good discussion here. And we can move to the next item, which is Supervisor Joya's county update.
Yeah, I'll be really brief. I'll start, maybe Edgar, why don't you summarize, I know the dumpster day we had on Saturday?
Yes. So on Saturday, we had a dumpster day at the Moose Lodge on Appian Way. It was a big success. We started at 8 a.m. and ended at noon. We had one 40-yard trash dumpster provided by Republic Services. It was a part of our county allowment. We had a second dumpster. That one was a trash dumpster. That was a 20-yard trash dumpster, which also got filled up. And then we had a 40-yard metal dumpster that got filled up about halfway. Overall, it was a big success. We opened it up to the folks of El Sobrante unincorporated area and Rollingwood. And then when it started to die down, we allowed folks from different area codes to show up and provide dump their trash as well. So that was a big success. John, you want me to keep on going or?
I was gonna cover other events. Anything else you want to say about this event?
We're looking at having, so we usually, El Sobrante usually has two. I scheduled in our dumpster day program to have two dumpster days, one in the spring / summer, another in the fall. So I'll send that over to whoever's going to be picking up the El Sobrante items and let them know that there's going to be another dumpster scheduled in fall. As soon as we know that, we'll share that information through Nextdoor. We usually do an e-blast and social media. And that's usually the way that we outreach and just send that information out.
Yeah, great. Yeah, and I think we did open it up to folks outside of unincorporated after we saw we had enough capacity. I have had a couple conversations with Councilmember Sohail Abana about, Richmond is responsible for the dumpsters in the city side because they get we all get an allotment. The county gets an allotment for the unincorporated area. Richmond gets an allotment for the city. And so I think they may have done one in May Valley a few months ago, but I've said maybe, it'd be nice to try to do them on the same day. So I think that's up to Richmond Public Works, but we've always conscious, we want to prioritize unincorporated residents because we have an allotment of so many dumpsters, just like Richmond does. So I think, hopefully will be some on the Richmond side soon. I did want to briefly say, because I'm not going to stay around for it. You're getting, I think, an update from the West County Wastewater District on the spill. I will just say what the Contra Costa Health Department, which doesn't have necessarily it has limited jurisdiction. I'll tell you their report. Contra Costa Health was notified by the California Office of Emergency Services on Saturday, June 17th, about a sewage release caused by a blockage in the West County Wastewater District sewer line across the street from 4108 San Pablo Dam Road. Environmental health staff went to the area to verify that the release had been stopped, as indicated in the California OES report, and this was on June 20th, and no longer presented any immediate threat to residents in the area. Since the sewage spilled into a storm drain that flows into San Pablo Creek, environmental health contacted the regulatory agencies that have jurisdiction, which is California Department of Fish and Wildlife and the San Francisco Regional Water Quality Control Board to make sure they were aware of the situation. Environmental health also informed the East Bay Regional Park District of the sewage release in the event it impacted their water quality monitoring at the only accessible swim beach in the area, which is Keller Beach. To date, the beach is currently open and has remained open since prior to the sewage release because they hadn't been impacted. And then on June 21st, apparently environmental health staff walked the creek with Fish and Wildlife. Based on the outcome of their walkthrough, it did not appear that Fish and Wildlife was going to perform any additional investigation. The county's following up with Fish and Wildlife and will let us know if they've done anything beyond the walkthrough. When we hear back from Fish and Wildlife. So that's the report that I have for that. I know, I've been in contact with Public Works about, the request to look at, closing, for special events, the street up at the Triangle. I think Sobrante Avenue we're talking about, Melinda. And so we're prepared to, Public Works is, is prepared with the Board of Supervisors permission to close that street for special events. There's a process to do that. I know there's been interest in having a farmer's market there. There's a process to set that up, which I've assembled what is needed, and I'll send that over to Gavin Raiders if for any processing, if for any farmer's market there, because it's in the unincorporated area. So I just wanted to add that. Make sure that I covered anything that was relevant here. There will be this fall a new draft of the general plan. It's a draft, will finally be printed. At that time, I think that's when we will have a presentation to the MAC where they will see the new community profile that was amended from the last time you saw it. And then you can provide further input. We're not adopting this until next year, so there's a lot of time. This is the draft that's out to the public, and you'll have an opportunity to provide input into that most recent draft. The county also went forward on a code enforcement action that the owner of the car wash paved without a county permit the adjacent property that they purchased, part of the Maori property. And so the last I drove by there, they had it blocked off because they hadn't gotten permits. So county enforcement is following up on that because again, they paved it without any permits that were required. Edgar, did you have anything else?
Yes. So I just wanted to quickly let folks know of two programs that we have. One program and an event that we're co-hosting.
Yeah.
I'll start with Thrive Thursday. So Thrive Thursday is a program that Supervisor Joya with Richmond Councilmember Dora Robinson are hosting and sponsoring in Richmond at the MLK Park off of Harbor Way. So every Thursday from 6:30 to 8 p.m. we'll be holding organized physical activities that range from Zumba, yoga, Tai Chi, track workouts, or just walking around the track with a dog.
Walk with the dog, yes.
Walk with the dog. And these are doctors from the County Health Service Department. And it's in bilingual. So if you want to go and you know family members or friends who speak Spanish, everyone there is going to be speaking Spanish. If not, I will be there. Someone else will be there who can translate on their behalf. And we're also partnering with some organizations, just to mention Urban Tills there, and they're providing vegetables and fruit from their urban farm. Rich City Rise is there, who's doing free bike repairs. First Five is there. CalFresh is there. The Latina Center is there. And the list goes on, and it varies depending on the week of the month. You can go on thrivethursdays.net to look at the information. It's a website that Supervisor Joya's office made where you can see what programs are going to be there, what weeks out of the month. If you have any questions for the time being, you can send that to me. When I transition out, you can send that over to my colleague, Tanya Polito. She's the one that's going to be the point of contact for that program. It's a great program. Come out. Even if you just want to hear some music or be with the community or do your own workout, it's a great place to be on a Thursday evening. And another thing I wanted to make folks aware, I see that O'Neill's here from SOS. O'Neill has been a great advocate for our unhoused community. We're hosting an event late in July 22nd, which is next Saturday. This is a event that's essentially a resource fair for unhoused folks. Is in partnership with Supervisor Joya's office, is in partnership with Council Member Arturo Cruz from the city of San Pablo and Assemblywoman Buffy Wick's office. We're hosting this resource fair it's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Hope Church on San Pablo. The address is 1860 Tyler Street, San Pablo. And essentially what we're gonna do is a one-stop shop for our unhoused community where they can come get a free hot meal. They can get into the showers. They can get free haircuts. We'll also provide clothing where, clothes is being donated from different organizations. They can come and grab food, grab some clothes. There's also going to be food provided for all the pets that the unhoused community has. So feel free to invite them as well. And I believe that we're also partnering with AC Transit, and they're going to provide some bus passes for folks. The Richmond Mission will be there as well. And it's really a event where we really want to provide as much wrapped around services. The County Health Service Department is going to be there, enrolling folks into Medi-Cal and providing folks and getting them into the county system. So please share the word, share this event, let folks know. Again, it's July 22nd from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Hope Church on San Pablo on 1860 Tyler Street, San Pablo. I'm not sure, O'Neill, if there's any comment that you want to add.
Well, I have flyers here, if anybody wants to pass it to any in the house, we are also doing shuttles, so they don't have to, unhoused, don't have that train. Truck their way there, we are gonna have shuttle service throughout Richmond, as well as us around and probably most of the San Paulo as well.
Thank you.
The contact number that I have. Set it up.
That's all I have, John.
That's all I have.
Okay. Oh, let's, what I thought we could do first, before we went to any questions regarding the county information, is we have Harry Weiner and Cheryl from West County Wastewater. And so I was thinking you and your colleague could just briefly talk about the sewage still.
I'm gonna introduce our district is out here at the board with me, coming here. Priority, Cheryl said it, is online. My name is Harry Weiner. I'm a board member, Cheryl, a board member. We also have our general manager, Andrew, our public relations person, Katie, and our director of operations, also an expert on what happened. My only comment would be, if the only thing that you knew about our district was the article that was sent around regarding the spill, then you know less than you knew before. So. That's right. And last comment, we also have Gordon Times, our manager of operations. Oh, sorry, Gordon, he's up there on the screen. And I appreciated the report from Supervisor Joya that he got from the health department. It was very much in line with our understanding and our experience. We can provide any level of detail or answer questions. I'm going to ask Michael to summarize a little bit our response actions. But before he does that, I'll just say that it matters to us a lot. Our job is to keep it in the sewer system and get it to the treatment plant, treat it. Whereas Director Weiner said, no less, almost 90% of that water is reused, recycled, sent East Baymont and on to the Chevron refinery for higher and better use. So there's a lot that goes on. We want to get it down there, and we don't want the spills. And this was an unfortunate one that happened, in the creek on an overflow line. We weren't aware of it for perhaps 2 weeks. We got a report on that. It said we think it was going for 2 weeks. We had to assume it was going the entire time at a certain volume, which needed a very large number. And so we went with that, which we report to OES exactly as the county said. And the purpose of that at Office of Emergency Services is any agency that has a spill, whether it's a hazardous material spill or sewer spill, they report to the Office of Emergency Services. From there, they will make all of the other notifications, the county health, or whoever it is that needs to be notified or should be notified in that particular area. The point being that the responding agency makes one call, the state agency then handles the rest of the distribution to the other agencies that be involved. They did come to the site, and as I said there was no further action asked of us and required of us as far as the remediation of it, it might have been a lot less than what we reported, but we don't know. And so we reported the larger amount, we did the sampling and monitoring afterwards, and that's where I'll turn it over to Michael to explain what our response was. Once we knew, we took some pretty quick action, and we'll just remind everybody, and Kate might want to talk more about that, please. If you see anything, report it. Even if you don't get it correctly to us at West County Wastewater, or got to Richmond or somewhere like that, they would send the information to us. Hopefully it came directly to us, but we can't know about these things. We don't know when there's a leak from the system out in the creek like that. It is not a pressurized system like that.
Yeah, so, well, I was just gonna give a little timeline, you may have mentioned some of it, but Friday, June 16th at approximately 11:10 a.m. West County Wastewater, that's when we were notified first to spill near San Pablo Dam Road and Appian Way at, in El Sobrante at the San Pablo Creek, like you mentioned. And then the following morning, Saturday morning, June 17th, our environmental compliance team were on site to take initial samples from the creek. Like Andrew had mentioned, the incident was reported to the state's monitoring board at 1:15 on Saturday, and we released a statement and posted to our website and also to the Next Door social media channel. Meanwhile, we reached out to the Spawners Group. For any of you who don't know, that's the San Pablo Watershed Neighbors Education and Restoration Society. We included correspondence also to the Watershed Program Supervisor John Joya's office, and also our own board of directors. And then lastly, on Friday, June 30th, a more detailed follow-up statement was posted to all those same channels. That's kind of your timeline. And I'll hand it over to Michael, Director of Infrastructure and Planning.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. I feel like Andrew and Kate did a really good job of giving you most of the story, and I'll just try to fill in some of the gaps and definitely answer more specific questions if you all have them. Essentially, this spill or the backup that initiated this spill was caused from grease and wipes in our pipe, which are things that should never be flushed down the drain to begin with. When the pipe backed up, it went over into what we call an overflow line. The purpose of that line is usually to capture additional flow if we have high rains or something like that, or a backup like this. And what we found is when it backed up into that line failed on us. I think one of the things that Kay didn't mention in her timeline, but I want to make sure that everyone is aware of here, when we got the call within 90 minutes, the spill was stopped. So though the original information we got was that it was going for about 2 weeks, we weren't aware of that, and when we actually were made aware, we stopped the spill in 90 minutes. That includes travel time for our folks coming from home on a holiday weekend, getting the equipment, stopping the spill. The following week, I believe it was the following week, the repair was completed. While we were completing the repair, we did some investigation of the line that we were repairing, and what we found was that underneath our line was washed away and eroded, which may have caused our line to be in bad condition. This was one of those perfect storm situations where our line actually sits right on top of the storm drain. So when it started leaking, leaked into the storm drain, direct access to the creek, which made it very hard for anyone to know that this was going on, let alone for us to see it or anyone to report it to us. We're fortunate that someone did report it to us at some point so that we were able to get it stopped. We completed the repair. We also have gone back out, and some of you may have seen us in the area after the repair and done some additional research and investigation of the other lines in the area. There's a bridge that goes across the creek right there on Appian. We have some lines underneath there, and we've gone in and done some additional investigation there with some more investigation planned to look at the condition of the lines. One of the things that we noticed when we were doing the repair and we investigated our line that had failed was that the rest of our line is in very good condition. So we don't have any strong concern about that line moving forward. I think Andrew mentioned that there was no additional requirements or things that were stipulated on us by any of the agencies that came out and walked the site and looked at it with us. We did a significant amount of testing. I think we've tested on three different occasions. We have the test results back from 2 of those occasions, and we're waiting on the test results on 1. One of the things that was important and that we found in our testing was that upstream, so before the spill site, there was already what they call background contamination in the creek. So there's already existing contamination in the creek. There's additional contamination at our spill site and contamination down. The second day we went out and tested, it had significantly reduced. And we're expecting that when we get the results from the third day of testing, it'll be much more reduced as well. Those are essentially the updates of what went on. Something you want to add in?
Yes, thank you, Michael. I did want to add, we made our reports WS. We responded and went out. Initially, we didn't have very good information, so we couldn't put out a lot of information. One thing that we could have and will do better in the future is any of these spills that of this size, of possible this size, will be in the creek, even though there's nothing immediately downstream, as the supervisor mentioned, way at the end, there is a beach. And other potential points of access where people could be in the water. While we met all our requirements, we're going to do a better job of improving that to notify specifically groups like the spawners who might be planning a cleanup event. We didn't know. We don't know if a cleanup event is being planned throughout the district. But if we get a better list and a better understanding of who could help us get that word out, if we have something like this, we'll do a better job of notifying in that respect.
Well, thank you so much for the report.
I had one additional thing.
May I say something, please?
Yes, go ahead, Cheryl.
Thank you so much. To that end, what Andrew just mentioned, I wanted to add to this. They did a great job of responding, the staff, and especially on the Saturday holiday weekend. And when I got the call, it was Father's Day the next day, for those of you who don't know what the date was in the middle of that. And there was a lot going on that weekend. It was Father's Day weekend. It was Juneteenth weekend. It was a lot going on that weekend. And so when I got a phone call that they needed to do this emergency work, it was well, get it done. But what was really important, and I wanted to underscore something that Michael just mentioned, was underscoring when someone sees something, to say something and to report it. We have a report mechanism on the website, and it's on our trucks, and we often underscore these couple of things that wipes and feminine products and those things do not go down our pipes. And we say this a lot. People still put wipes down the pipes. And if you see something backed up, and to say something. Yes, I realize that there's some people who may know that some of us are on the board, or that I have this title, these president's title, but I'm not going out and taking things out of the pipes, you guys. It's not me. I don't unstuff them. I don't go out. And that's why Gordon Times is on here now. He's the CSO. He manages the guys who actually take the trucks out. This is why Andrew is here speaking to you now. We have that emergency number on purpose. So people putting things on Nextdoor or flooding our emails, the director's emails, there's not the same thing as actually reporting it to the people who can do something about it. So I wanted to say that. I wanted to say that so that we
go is just
Yeah.
some questions, because we've got a number of
Yeah.
other
I
items.
understand that. I just wanted to make sure that we underscore that is something that is really, really important, because this can impact, as Supervisor Joya said, this can impact not just the water source, but our parks and recs as well. So
Okay,
thank you. Thank
so
you.
much. And so what I'd like to do is just briefly open it to the MAC, and then go to the audience in the building. And so go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly, for clarity, would you say that the creek is safe? My property is on a creek, my husband gets into the creek. Is it safe for us to be in it right now?
An excellent question, and I'm good. He's walking out of the room, Supervisor Joy. The agency that's going to be able to answer that question is the Contra Costa Health Department. That's really out of our league. We've taken the samples, we've provided the data and the results. Right, but it's the health department. They'll make the call.
Yes, I need to say something though, because I've talked to environmental health. Environmental health is responsible for risk to the public from the sewage spill at the point where the sewage spill occurred. They advised me that the creek issues are under the Regional Water Quality Control Board and Fish and Wildlife, which is why Fish and Wildlife went out there. So that's how it was explained to me, and that environmental health had determined that where the sewage spill occurred, that there was no additional threat to the public because it stopped, but that any ongoing issues about the quality of the creek are within Fish and Wildlife or the regional board. So I just want to, environmental health doesn't have jurisdiction on that part, but so that's why they contacted the Fish and Wildlife and did a walkthrough with them.
Absolutely true. And at the point and the point of impact and the possible impact to human health. And so any ongoing, so it is possible that, you know, there could be some residual problem downstream that we end up identifying and it affected fish spawning or something like that, for example. That's why Fish and Wildlife or Water Quality Control Board would be involved. But we collect the samples, we stop it, we do that, but that's out of our expertise to say, is it safe or is it not safe? We do know how to collect the samples properly though. And bring it.
So, thank you so much, and I really appreciate the report from West County Wastewater. And any more questions from the back?
Not a question, just a comment, more of a, it's what you said earlier, you're there in the background, we don't really know what you think. It's really good that you came here and explained what happened and concisely, and so we could understand it, and that the fact your responsibility, that you had the lessons learned. I kind of relate a little bit because I work for East Bay Line, so I don't do anything in the wastewater or when it comes to service, but I hear things that happen with our system, you know, that's like that. So I see it from our end where we're going to be explaining what happened to folks. So I appreciate it being a member of this community that you come in here and tell us what's up and lessons learned. So I thank you for that. So
Great, thank you. Any more questions from the back? In that case,
Martha.
Mark.
Okay, I have several comments in which may give you additional information and multiple questions. I'll try to get through them in my 2 minutes. First of all, my concern is, you said the environmental health came out the day after you discovered the spill, Saturday, and determined there was no risk to the public. How were they able to determine that, given the day they didn't know how long the spill had been taking place? B, there wouldn't have been time to take and get results back from any bacterial testing. I think people downstream should have been notified immediately. And I will say, I have talked to, so first of all, I'm Martha Berthelsen, I'm the Spawner Creek Group. I live in the neighborhood, although not right on this section of San Pablo Creek. I have talked to several of my neighbors that live downstream. None of them had gotten any kind of notification. One of them pointed out the fact that he gets notification every so often from East Bay Mud, saying that it's his duty to go in and clean debris out of the creek so that water can flow. Isn't it an agency's responsibility to let us know when there's a potential sewage spill? People do go in that creek. And those of us who live on creeks, this is an amenity, and there's not, you can't say there's nothing between here and Keller Beach. There are a great many residences. So first of all, how did they determine there was no risk? I think that's, I doubt that they were able to really determine that just by in that day looking at it. Secondly, I get your point, we should call you. None of the neighbors I talked to knew that they were called wastewater district. We have regional water board, we have nutrition and groundlife, we have environmental health, we have East Bay Mud.
30 seconds.
Oh, and as a matter of fact, a neighbor let me know as a member of Spawners that she had emailed Dr. Supervisor Joya's office and East Bay Mud on, check my notes just to be sure, May 31st. That she had noticed an odd smell. And I went down and I looked at the creek right upstream from the bridge. And at that moment, I didn't smell anything. I did see some residue on the bank.
That's 2 minutes. So
Do I get a second chance?
take an additional 30 seconds or so.
Okay.
We have a lot of other items to go through.
Okay. So my question is, how can we improve two-way communication? Residents need to know who to call in what instance, and there needs to be a better system. I happened to to discover the notice on next door. I don't usually spend a lot of time on next door. And the only reason I saw it was I was randomly scrolling and I called off the creek cleanup. I phoned the watershed project and told them to call off the creek cleanup because we didn't know if the creek was. Thank you. That's how we found out about it. Pretty random. I really think the notification from the agency is inadequate and communication to residents is critical. And I also would like to see this background contamination addressed.
Thank you so much for your comment, sir.
I think, I'm gonna be a voice of the unhoused right now.
Yes,
And as well as the neighbors, the unhoused neighbors, as well as the house neighbors. It's almost disrespectful to say there's nothing from here to Catherine Beach. I can think about 50 people that live on that creek right now that wash their clothes in there. So how are we gonna say that was safe when they're washing their clothes? You know, what I mean, and I'm not saying we should be that, we've seen that, should be told. Thank you for making that call, because my team
I
did
let
that.
them know.
We were, no, we did, we got delayed. That was the only reason my team knew about the spill. Well, I'm in the encampments every day. I walk those encampments multiple times a week. I have teams out here. 4 might have got sent, but I'm just, I guess my question, my statement was that I feel disrespected, but I think that there's nobody from here to Keppers Beach. There's no houses, there's nobody else. There's a lot between here and Keppers Beach. But I guess my question is, and I think you kind of answered it, you made the call, the county teams. How are people living on the side of the creek, whether housed or unhoused, notified? I wasn't notified, and I'm in these encampments, I'm talking to them. Only reason why I know is because she made the call to the watershed project, and they said, hey, we need to delay this. And that was the only reason why I was able to tell the 100 people living on the creek from here, from literally here to San Pablo. You guys might not want to wash your clothes today in that, you know, or might not want to get in that creek. I'm just curious on what the outreach response, because 90 minutes meeting, awesome. We don't know how long they were doing laundry in that though. You know what I mean? So I'm just kind of curious on that. What was the response, or who was able to tell these all the way from here to Kettler's Beach? You know, that you might not want to go in there.
So we might give a chance to
Andrew,
folks who.
happy to respond to it. There was certainly no disrespect intended by my comment. I was really referring to a comment that had been made already about that beach is open to sampling, because what they're following is the protocols on level of E. coli that's present. Is it low enough for swimming? But what I did say right after that was we're going to make improvements, and that we noticed as required to, the information went out, we posted, but we did not go downstream, as I said, and downstream users, the downstream, there's a lot of people in contact downstream. So if by reference to that, the understanding was that we don't get that, that was poor communication on my part, because what I was hoping you would hear was that we recognize that that's something we need to improve. And the spawners, you just got to notice again from a few days ago, because we had a failure at Carriage Hills. And at that location, it was a force main. Our system is old, our system is and we're in the process of doing the best we can to prioritize and focus where we have the problems. But in that case, there was a spill that came out, it was onto the asphalt. Someone noticed it quickly and notified us. We responded again. In that case, we had the repair effected in less than 8 hours. And we did our basic notification, but then we also sent information to the spawners and others that we knew that we had contact with within that immediate area. And that's why I held this card up from the gentleman here. And we have it because we want to do a better job of that. We should have. We recognize that. And that's part of the reason we're here, is to say that and to say we know that and we can learn that. How do we know it's safe?
Go ahead.
Okay, as a layperson, walking, by the creek, going in and get out, how would I know there had been an overflow or sewage spill? I mean, how would I be able to identify?
Well, if you're talking about, if you see
Have
something,
you done an educational program? We
We-
have flyers in the library,
What-
pictures, so I can say, oh, that's
I-
overflow. Get out of that creek.
I will turn that over to Kate here in a moment, but absolutely, that we're many events. We were at the Juneteenth event in Richmond, Kate and I manning our booth. And that's exactly what we're doing, standing on educational materials, talking to people. When we got a phone call from our operations person notifying me of a problem. So we do have it, we're trying to work with that. There are many agencies that are working with it. East Bay Mud is a big one, and East Bay doing so with the fog, oil and grease, don't flush it, et cetera. But we're trying to do more. We're trying to do more because it's beneficial to all of us.
All right.
Just a comment, and just for people to know, it was an unhoused, person who
Right.
went to the green team cleanup, who mentioned it to me, that they thought there was a spill in the creek. My brother works for sewage, LA County, so I know what that means. So I then alerted our team member, Marcia, who has, a history with working with waste management. So we didn't go to know, that unhoused person's not gonna go to the internet and do a form, fill out. So some of these areas where there could be potential leaks is gonna be a little more unorthodox. And so I think, the education not only is like flyers and putting out posters for kids, but it's also who habitates that area, who is exposed to that area, like spawners, doing their cleanup, SOS, and figuring out in your communication department, these are our key people. How are we quarterly reminding folks there of, when they hear something, see something, report it, and what's the other way besides an internet that people don't have access to, that you guys get the information right away and take care of it, because if that gentleman who was supposed to be cleaning up litter on the streets with us didn't just happen to casually say to me, I think there's a leak, it really smells, I would have not had turned around and just with my brother's background, had told Marcia, who then contacted you guys. So it was just like this weird kind of natural way of word of mouth to get this thing resolved. And I think that's more organically that occurs a lot more in at least this unincorporated area. So-
It's not just the internet, a phone call could do it, and a lot of people don't know the special districts that serve particular functions, but if the phone call went to the San Pablo Police Department, if it went to Contra Costa County, if it went to the water board, if it went to the fire department, if it went to any of those public agencies, it would get to us. It might be, instead of 90 minutes, it might be an hour and a half or something before it was completed, because there might be some delay there. But all of the agencies, local agencies at that level, know who to call and who to respond to. So the answer is, might not know our specific phone number, which we try to get out there, but any of the public emergency, fire department being the primary.
So I think we have time for one more question, and then I really think we need to move to the next items.
Yeah, I know that we live on the creek, as Mickey said, and so we get calls from EV Mud about they're gonna increase the water flow and so forth. So maybe that network of information can be utilized, and then you say what location or something. I respect what you're trying to accomplish. I appreciate it. That you can't tell people about something you don't know about.
But that is a really good possibility along San Pablo for that.
So we've had I think, a pretty extensive discussion of this event. So I'd like to suggest that if people have follow-up questions, perhaps they can send them to Supervisor Joya's office and they can be channeled to the right folks. Meanwhile, thank you so much for your report.
We will, Edgar, if you want to get in touch with us, through Kate, in a couple of months or whatever, we'll come back and you guys have thought about some other ideas and some other groups that you think within the community should be notified and get on the list and help the distribution. That's exactly why Kate's here, when I say here, meaning our organization, to help try to improve that.
Okay, Melinda.
Just really quick. So that list from East Bay, that is the people who live on the creek. It's nobody else
Yeah.
gets on that list unless you live on the creek.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that you might have considered mixing. Just because a lot of people do subscribe to that because of wildfires and other things. And this seems like the same kind of thing. It is public health, and so mixing with my other thing that might be worth it. Get it broader out.
Thank you. So thank you so much for bringing the whole team to come in and report on this. It's been very useful. There's a lot of interest in this event. So thank you. I think we have to move to the next agenda items. So we've got reports from fire. Is Chief Gage still there?
Yes.
What a man. Go Chief.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, you can.
Okay, I'm gonna make this short in light of a very long meeting. Two things to report out on the fire district. We had a very busy 4th of July. During the 6-hour period between 8 o'clock at night and 2 o'clock in the morning, we responded to over 60 fires countywide. That's a 400% increase over what we would normally see on a Tuesday night. There's always bad news that goes along with this report. We responded to almost all of those fires and were able to put them out really quickly, but we did have 4 structure fires result district-wide due to illegal fireworks use. We also had a gentleman that suffered a debilitating hand injury from a firework that went off in his hand. So we still have a lot of work to do in terms of 4th of July safety. We planned ahead. We staffed 20 additional firefighters over our normal number of firefighters, an additional hand crew, an additional bulldozer, multiple dispatchers, multiple fire chiefs. We responded to the multiple incidents as quickly and effectively as we could. But we got a lot of work to do. I think what contributed to things this year was the record amount of rainfall we got this year. So we had a very high grass crop, which was receptive to fireworks starts. We were very fortunate that it was a Tuesday night and the weather was very favorable. If that had been a Saturday night with fire weather, we would have had even worse trouble than we had. The last thing I want to leave you with is I provided the report that Fire Chief Bouchard puts together every month and provides to the Board of Supervisors, our Board of Directors. He's going to forward that to everyone. If you have any questions on anything that's covered in the report, feel free to contact Edgar. He can contact me, or most of you have my contact. You can contact me directly. Last item, because it's that time of the year, is the fire district funded through Measure X has the ability for homeowners to really provide for increased fire protection through vegetation management, evacuation, corridor maintenance, home hardening, a lot of different programs. So I put that in the chat. If you want to check out those resources, you just fill out a simple Google form with a request. If you want to work with your neighbors, we can help you with a neighborhood project. If you want to work on a bigger fuels management program, we can do mitigation work like shaded fuel breaks and larger projects like that. End of report, and I would be glad to take any questions you might have.
Any questions for Chief Gage? Okay.
I just have a quick question. The 60 fires, was it concentrated in one particular area, or was it just relatively spread out?
It was relatively spread out. I would say the majority of the fires occurred in the eastern portion of the district. I was looking at the stats, and the majority of the fires occurred within the city of Antioch. But we had about 9 fires in El Sobrante and San Pablo that night. No significant structure damage to any structures in the West County area, Pinole, El Sobrante, or San Pablo.
Thank you.
Chris?
Thank you for your work. I would also like to suggest that maybe you were talking about somebody a disfiguring injury as a result of a firecracker, that maybe what the department might want to do is to collect the story of that and in June of every year start publicizing it, because I think a lot of people think, well, fireworks are cute, they make noise, but they don't really realize how dangerous they are. And the news media gravitates towards injury type of stories and stuff. So I think you would really be able to bring some attention to the fact that people really are getting harmed, and like maybe put the 10 worst injuries or something like that and feed it to the news media. I think that's something they would eat up and it would really help the communities understand the risk.
Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. We do a press conference every year where we show how fireworks can cause fires, but we should definitely reinforce that, fireworks are not only a threat to your property, but they could be a threat to your person or your life. So I'll forward that to our PIO folks.
I have a question. Oh, actually two. Oh, what happened at the crunchy chicken place? It seems to have burned.
Yeah, so our last tour, I actually responded out to the fire We had what appeared to be an exterior fire next to the Crunchy Chicken just down the road from Station 69. That fire was burning on the side of the building and extended into the business itself. We were able to extinguish the fire relatively quickly. It required a lot of mop up to make sure that the fire was completely extinguished. We have not released a cause in that fire, but it did appear as if the fire started on the exterior of the building.
And a second question, it's nothing, thank you. A second question. I live on site in Valley View and I don't know, it's about 2 acres of empty land that looks like a fire pit, right? It's scary that it's being allowed to be so weedy, and I don't know who to contact. I think it's privately owned, and I know it's Richmond, but I don't really know who to follow up with.
Yeah.
So I can forward you a link to fill out a form and give us the information that we need to determine what jurisdiction it's in and try to get that exterior hazard addressed. So I'm going to go ahead and put that link in the chat, and Edgar's more than if you want to forward contacts to me, I can follow up on that directly.
It's also a code enforcement thing. The reason I say this is back in the day when the lot next to my house was vacant, and it got severely overgrown. I call code enforcement. This is not Sobrante, but Richmond has code enforcement as well. So it is an issue because the lot is, as you say, full of weeds, it's a fire hazard and a danger, and it needs to be properly maintained. And so so Chief Gate is correct. But, code enforcement as well. So there's multiple ways to look to attack the problem.
Can I just say, I suspect you can also, for code enforcement, you can use the mobile citizen app. And then it gives them geolocation and they know exactly where it is.
I didn't realize I could do that for that.
I can probably do that and I will go by that lot. I know where it is.
I want you to know though, that this is like every year I have to complain about the lot and it's
Every year.
really scary. It's
Do
really.
do you happen to know if it's in the jurisdiction of the county or the city?
No,
She
I
thinks
know
it's Richmond.
I know it is. It's the southeast corner of Appian and Sunset Drive. I mean, Valley View and Sunset Drive, sorry.
I can look into it tomorrow morning.
Edgar can look into that.
I'll look into it. APN.
So, Pete Gage, thank you so much for your report. I think we can move on to the next agenda item, which is Lieutenant Rodriguez report from the Sheriff's Office Base Station.
Yes, I'll start off just with the select crime trends and continue along with Chief Gage, keep it short. So we had 8 select crime trends for the month of April, 15 for the month of May, and 11 for the month of June. Of those, the majority were property crimes. Along those lines, we took 648 calls for service, and we generated 55 reports off those calls for service. As mentioned earlier, on July 3rd, we had our shift change, which increased now. We have completed the increase with the staffing. So now all 5 shifts will have 7 deputies assigned. Outside of that, we've been participating in special details with the other agencies on the west end of the county for proactive enforcement, particularly, traffic violations, things of that nature. So we have one coming up this month, but so far those have been productive. I'm open to any questions.
Any questions for Lieutenant Rodriguez? I think it was a definitive presentation, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you for everything you do.
Appreciate you guys.
So we now go to discussion items, development plan applications, etc. We have a matter to consider, item CDDP 23-03014. It's a modification for constructing a retaining wall to mitigate a landslide into San Pablo Creek. It's being done in a county easement. And so special variance is requested. Is the homeowner or the engineer involved present to discuss this with us?
Do check and see, I don't think there's anybody on the.
So do we have anybody on Zoom who is advocating for this particular project and can take us through it?
I would say no. Doesn't seem to be any response either, so.
So my general take on this is I don't feel any ability, I don't have any ability to evaluate this technically. It does seem to me that this does, as long as the engineering is done right, it improves the creek rather than making things worse by preventing erosion. You
I just question, what do you mean by improve the creek? Because, I mean, I'm sorry, I was talking to wastewater people who just stepped in, so they want a retaining wall right on the bank of the creek.
Right, which would presumably prevent future landslides into the creek.
They would also destroy the riparian. There's other consideration.
Putting walls and hardening the creek is not improving the creek.
Right.
Well, whose property is it on? Their property or?
So it's on their property within County East. So I think they're building it to prevent their property from sliding into the creek.
How far is from the creek?
Can't tell from this drawing.
Yeah, that's why it would have been really useful to have
The drawings are not.
an engineer or the homeowner involved.
They said they were gonna be, I spoke with them. They might have left, but they confirmed yesterday and on Friday, so.
That they would be here.
Mhm.
So obviously there are arguments and counter arguments to this.
Well, maybe.
Well, maybe.
Could we just table it or give it out?
So, what I don't see in here is most, as we learned earlier, and West County wastewater also knows. When something happens in the creek, Fish and Wildlife is actually the agency that really has responsibility for creeks. So what I don't see in here is ordinarily, I'm totally happy going with something as long as the county says it's okay. But I don't see that Fish and Wildlife has to look at this, and I think Fish and Wildlife ought to look at this. And I'd feel fine with it if Fish and Wildlife said it was fine. Let's just put it that way.
However, I would speak on it, we don't want to degrade a house. I have a house, a valley degraded, that means we don't lose money. Property tax. I don't want to lose money, I lose the house.
Well, we don't know anything about any of that.
My take on this is that because the property owner or developer or engineer are not here, I don't know that we can come to any conclusion on this. But also remember that we are an advisory committee and it doesn't matter what we say and don't say. Because we're advisory, they can do what they want, regardless of say, I just.
Well, we don't have the technical ability.
Well, no, yeah, I don't think it's just a question, just reminding us, even if we did.
Right.
It's still, it would be, like I said, we could say we love it, we could say we hate it, we could say we don't have an opinion on it. And the development, the county said, okay, thanks, whatever, and we'll do what they want to do.
So, I mean, I think one thing that we can conclude is that it's a reasonable thing for the owner to construct a retaining wall to prevent their property from sliding into the creek.
Yes.
I think Melinda's suggestion is well taken, that it should be evaluated by an agency that has insight into environmental impacts. So we can write I can write an email to the person in charge, the engineer in charge, the county person, I think it's Adrian Beliz.
Yep.
Stating that we have these concerns, that
Yeah,
we understand the homeowner's position. And we feel, this is a reasonable thing to do, but we would like to have some.
Because I just don't see them on the application summary where it says what agencies are looking at it.
So is the MAC okay with that approach? Writing that email?
I like that.
All right, so that takes care of that. Edgar, I'll send an email to Adrian Beliz copy to you.
Yep.
And so we can move on to the next item in our agenda, which is information item reports by MAC members. So I have just a couple of items. First item, I'm involved in the oversight committee. I'm a member of the oversight committee for the Martinez refinery accident. And so there are two things going on there. One of them is an investigation of the health impact, and the other one is an investigation of the root cause. Each analysis is being handled by a different independent consulting company. The consulting company in charge of doing the evaluation of the health impact has completed its final report. It's not ready yet, but once it is ready, which I believe will be the end of the month, we have to comment by I believe July 14th. I'll be happy to get a report on that, maybe in the next.
This is the previous one, not the one that just happened.
This is this is not the coke dust.
Okay.
Okay, the same, the current problem. And then the other one is the root cause analysis, which basically deals with the failures of the refining company to basically determine, prevent the thing from happening and inform the public and so on and so forth.
Basically,
That's being right now being litigated in terms of NDAs. So once we have an NDA and they can disclose the information to us, we'll begin our process with that. And then the other thing is I also am involved with the Sobrante stroll. That's going to happen September 17th. So if you're interested in having a booth, please apply at the El Sobrante Chamber of Commerce. If the application.
Can we get a canopy?
Yeah.
Please?
Yes, we'll
That's
have a
all I
canopy.
have. Does anybody else have an information report?
Thank you for that info. I decided Edgar was from the time we used to have a canopy, but that was the issue last year. Hopefully this good weather won't be crazy.
All right,
I have an extra one if you need it.
Okay,
As
perfect.
soon as we call- Well, come on to call me.
subcommittee reports. Do you have any? anything you wanna add?
Okay, yeah, third Saturday cleanup is this Saturday, July 15th from 10 to noon. Meet at the library here, we've got equipment, and we're gonna get your suggestions for locations that need some attention, and we'll send people out to those places. So please join us, we're doing a really good job of staying on top of it, but we still need volunteers. So please join us on our third Saturday cleanup. And then we're going to have this next Wednesday, July 19th, we're going to have an actual subcommittee meeting. And I hope you will come for our cleanup and beautification subcommittee meeting. We'll have some reports by SOS Richmond on their latest efforts, by spawners, by Triangle Works about their mural project, which they have begun, and I hope you can go check it out on Appian Way and the Fran Way. It's turning out really nice. I think it's really a beautiful addition to our community. And then we're going to start planning for the stroll. And we hope to have a booth there and also participate in the parades like we did last time. And have some fun with that. And then for our coastal cleanup day, which is September 23rd. And I hope that we'll have another collaboration with the Green Team, with Spawners and SOS Richmond, because we work so nicely together and have a bigger effort. So come to the meeting next Wednesday at 6:30 here in the library or on Zoom. And hopefully Edgar will communicate with people who don't have the Zoom information. And I'll send out another email with that for my list that I have identified of people who are interested in our cleanup efforts about that meeting. But the more the merrier, who can give us their input, how they would like to improve our cleanup efforts, maybe start a public education campaign. and also start planning for these other upcoming events. So that's it. Anybody else?
Yeah, I just want to say a big shout out to the Green Team members for helping out with the dumpster and that event too.
Also, Oscar, our intern, he was a star at the. Yeah.
I could only pick up and throw very light things. Okay, so agenda items, speakers for upcoming SMAC meetings. We have a suggestion about the improvements to the water treatment plant. Edmund,
Yeah.
any other further ideas?
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly comment, sorry. So the East Bay Mud water treatment plant, they're gonna present, this is something that's been on the calendar for some time now, but we've been getting a lot of calls about their I guess like what they're doing for the gardening projects they have in that facility. What the public is saying is that it's not what they first proposed. So I sent that over to Joe Volker from East Bay Mud, and he's aware of it. So next month when they present this project, there's going to be folks here asking questions about what was originally proposed to what is there now, and I guess like reasons for the discrepancy there. So that's something for you folks to know and just kind of be aware of. And then I just wrote down to have the wastewater folks present later in the year.
So those who know, Mr. Volker, he works in public information. He was here for the last how many years. Can you find out who else is coming besides him?
Yes, I can.
They always come in March. Well, sometimes, yes, they do, but they also know that they're looking at somebody who they know works with us. They find that it's huge. Well, West County, we can come out.
You did. You were well represented today. Okay, so if there are no further.
I just want to make a comment. Is there any way that we can have some of this information posted into the library? Because I go to the library at least once a week. And I look on the bulletin board, which one of them, I look around, and I never see our agenda.
It's actually, it should be there.
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Yeah, it should be there. because
Yeah.
I remember when I was the chair, we had it posted here.
It's
so-
posted when we share it. Well, Tom, the librarian, he told me that he posts it as soon as it's available. And yeah, I share it at least a week before on Friday, and that's when you folks get there. It's not posted here.
He has to go and print it out for me. I'm sitting there reading something else while you guys are not doing that. But a lot of other information. For instance, how to identify maybe trash in the creek. This is trash and these are wipes and don't put this. I don't see a lot of education information around.
Okay.
Good point. So
Or we need presenters to come and actually show us on the screen the PowerPoint.
I can speak with the librarian and share with them information for they can just post it on their bulletin board.
this is about agenda items. Are there any further suggestions about agenda items?
This is not exactly an agenda. Is this his last meeting?
Yes.
Just suck.
No, let's see.
Yes, we here next Wednesday as well at our.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yep.
I think we can give a huge hand to Edgar. Because he came in after James Lyons, and I think Edgar's done an amazing job. And future lawyer.
Yeah.
And if you need a referral or recommendation.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, seriously, we would write you letters of recommendation on one side down the other. Be great.
Thank you. No, you folks welcome me with open hands, and open arms. I mean, and it's been amazing, you know, being kind of part of the El Sobrante community. And just, it's, you know, it's like a family, right? Like it's everyone has their personalities, but you know, that's what makes it unique. It makes it personal. And I enjoyed that. And I enjoyed being here. Yeah.
We're very glad to have you. We appreciate all the work that you've done because we know it's a challenging balancing act that you have. And we will miss you and we wish you best of luck in your endeavors becoming an attorney.
Thank
We thank you.
Thank you, George.
And maybe we'll vote for you when it's.
Yeah, because we can have the office.
I don't know about that, but we'll see. That's it. So, yeah.
Is there?
So it's time to move.
Huh?
to public comment. Everybody's got 2 minutes each, so we open it to the audience. Go ahead.
I'll keep it real brief because I will be here next week with more in depth. If you guys ever would love us, have it in depth to let you know what your is about, what's going on. We'd be happy to do it. This is our director of operations, Tony. So she probably will be at one of these meetings and always having one of there. Resident. We did Tommy and I recently did a what we're calling like a fire hazard outreach, and we started in out here. The numbers are huge. The encampments are bigger. It's not official numbers, but I can say that it's a lot more official than the numbers you guys maybe have seen. So
The fire hazard is scary, is real, yeah.
So we're working with Sohela to do that, and that's throughout Richmond. We did start here from the water tower to the end of El Sobrante and throughout. We are ramping up our services out here. We're going to provide showers twice a week now, starting on the 25th, Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Church of Christ. We also every Monday we have a crew in El Sobrante, what we're calling a local crew. That will be dedicated every Monday to different encampments throughout. We started, and I'm gonna say we took at least 2 tons of trash out this Monday out of the Radies across the street encampment. And this will happen at least once a week. We also have a local steward which works 9 hours, 3 days a week, 3 hours each day. That we have him dedicated 1 day at Grady's, 1 day at, like, I believe tomorrow he's at PJ's, if there's a problem there. And we're gonna have him changing, and so we'll have a rotating every Monday, we may not be there, but we'll be at PJ's, we'll be at other areas, so. Before we walk out, please take one of these flyers on the bottom of it, has our neighbors care line. I put it out at the last meeting on Zoom, but this tells us where to go clean. You know, and hopefully we'll be able to do more of the Saturdays. We just have such a busy schedule, but if you don't remind me, it's hard for me to remember this Saturday. We would love to be more a part of the third Saturday thing.
Thank you so much.
We were your first love, just don't forget that.
So, Chris.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the mural being painted by the triangle works and so forth, and they were going to do a second follow-up paintings in August, but due to some permitting issues, I think is being pushed into September and October, so. First off, appreciate the people who participated in that, and also warning you, if you thought you were gonna go there in August to do it, you're not. A little later.
I thought he said August instead.
Other,
That's right, July got canceled.
Yeah.
They didn't need it to finish.
other public comment?
Okay, I just wanted to say that spawners did hold our postponed creek cleanup, and with the help of SOS and staff from the watershed project, we got great pickup truck loads of stuff. The creek simply behind the library. Most of that was the SOS guys hauling up stuff that had been left behind by.
Estimate over a ton out of there, that option.
But there was also scattered trash throughout the whole property that we also cleaned up. We had 2 guys in the creek with waders on. And multiple people along the bank. So we did finally get our creek cleaned up. We totally filled up 1.5 parking spaces out here.
They were kind of going, wait, you guys have more trash coming?
And my other is kind of a question. So I'd like to see this really keep moving forward on working on better communication between agencies and community groups in terms of the creek. And who's the best agency or organization to facilitate that? Would that be Supervisor Joy's office? Would it be the MAC?
I think it'll be us.
Getting multiple agencies on the same page. I mean, Green Team has a great email list. Chamber of Commerce has a great email list. You know, I think community groups can be very helpful in disseminating the information on who to call and also helping disseminate information about any kind of a spill to our local community.
And it would probably be the supervisor's office, because that would be a catch-all, I think, because it has the greater bandwidth and the capacity, because it's a larger organization, they can consolidate all of them all and basically turn it into one giant, whatever, an email blast, something like that.
Okay,
Well, and I'm really hopeful that one of the things that come out of this spill is West County wastewater being able to work with East Bay Mud around. Because that text list for the dam releases, that really, if it's on the creek. That's gonna get most people on the creek except for SOS, and,
That should have been utilized.
but they probably didn't even know it existed.
Yeah, when you not talking to the other, right, that's common. We can fix it. It does need to get fixed.
are there further public comments?
Yeah, I want us to start thinking about ways that we can communicate with our community. And I was starting to look into like maybe a big digital bulletin board somewhere on San Pablo Dam Road or something, where we can put announcements like MAC meeting, cleanup day, different notifications to the community. So I think they can get expensive, but you know, we keep talking about having a community bulletin board, and now I'm starting to think that maybe we should look into if we can get
When
the
can
money.
you try to permit that?
And it's, I think, you know what, that would be an excellent idea to put an agenda item on that, just to get the research about that, that would be something.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Edgar, I think that'd be a.
Yep. Okay.
An electronic.
Yeah, electronic that we can put messages out to the community, it's a fire hazard today,
Right.
or different things, or,
Yes.
you know, different things that we want to get out to the community that we have.
Well, I would say we would host that, but I don't want to go through the permitting hell that will be.
Any, like I said.
As a signage.
On the future
There's a
agenda.
huge signing ordinance.
On the future agenda.
No place but signage.
So any other further public comment, Harry?
I'd like to compliment Sohail Obama for getting the stroll $2,000 from Richmond.
Oh, yeah.
It's all the difference.
There's a lot of difference.
And also,
Ticking too under a fire.
Sobrante. I would like us, I would like you not to lose the fact that when the district surveyed for coliform bacteria, they surveyed above the spill, at the spill, and below the spill. And it was worse below the spill, but it was bad. But there were coliform bacteria above the spill.
And that needs.
And anecdotally speaking, not everybody in El Sobrante is on sewer. There are plenty of houses with septic. So
They could be leaching into the creek.
that's usually how it gets there, particularly in heavy rain. So just point that out. Those are two things. That's all I agree.
thank you. And Joggle Oak Mechanics Bank also gave us a grant as well, so it allowed us to basically carry out the stroll and have maybe a little bit left over to support charitable causes and also. So,
That is.
excellent.
If it helps to, we got boots in the ground, so just saying, I can donate a few of our employees to help work the streets and. Number hand out. Speaking about.
So do we have any further public comment? In that case.
My name is Connie. Is it Marty?